Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, this is important clarification of consciousness and the mind, the brain, which has to be clarified because this is an endless and worthless debate, really. What is consciousness, where it comes from? Ultimately, who cares? And I did make a short little lecture on that, but what does it matter? You're a sentient, you're a live being, whether you're living in the matrix or in a test tube or in somebody's tennis shoe on planet X12, that you're some sort of bug virus. It doesn't matter. We are living entities that feel pain, feel good, feel bad, etc. So the point is, it doesn't really matter what that is. Now, the scientists like to confuse people of what consciousness is. Well, I would figure that a scientist would argue what consciousness is, particularly these parapsychology, these overeducated dumbbells with fake certificates that want to contemplate the nature of reality. What is there to contemplate the nature of reality? You're living in reality wherever you are, whether in whatever country that is. Your reality is this. And if you live in a certain place, you're going to eat certain foods, speak certain languages. That's your reality. And everybody's reality is kind of similar. We have similar paths in life, but there's also a great difference because societies are so different. With religions, cultures, etc. It's hard to believe that the average Indian from India would be living the same lifestyle as the average American who's quasi-successful. So I think there's a lot of difference, and there are such class levels, and that includes the United States, which has always been a highly class-based country. Another lie, but the bottom line is that you're living a certain lifestyle. You do things that your class tells you to do because of your economic situation. And of course, this is what happens around the world. So you were alive, you're involved in this, and it doesn't matter what all this is, where it came from is nonsense. But let's tell you how consciousness works in terms of coming to you. Now, consciousness is your inner magical being, your higher self, your soul. Okay? That's what consciousness is. Why this confuses? Well, everything confuses regular science. I mean, after all, I'm so busy using all their cures and plugging in a bunch of new devices into their free energy devices. I don't have much time to do much of anything else. All their failures while they're contemplating what they think is higher development when they can't even figure out the basics. They're in Tinker Toy land. So when we understand how does it work, and let's get into this whole mind situation. People give all this credit, and this is part of what's been going on for the last 40 or 50 years. We went into the different generations. My parents' generations were all stuck in the evolution reality. Oh, well, we're really evolution. We're going to all evolve out of this. We're going to have super brains, better lungs. Well, this is a misnomer, of course. And while there are some changes apparently to the species to a degree, these things take millions of years to evolve things. So the whole, of course, evolution theory, which is just a theory, is very bogus in most levels of it. There's a whole bunch of things that don't make sense there. Now, I'm not a person who believes that there is a God that controls you. And again, I believe that's kind of stupid. It has to be a process that is kind of on automatic. Why would you involve yourself in everybody's life? It doesn't make any sense. How egotistical. So the whole idea is this is a process, and I do believe there's been genetic manipulation of species here. That's why we have the, quote, missing link. And this was part of the Darwin problem in general. There was a missing link. There's never a good transition from what is considered primates to Homo sapiens. We haven't found the in-between one. Well, what happened? Well, I do believe that species on this planet were manipulated and changed. And part of the problems is why the Homo sapiens are so scarily freaky is because of the fact that there's been a lot of errors and maybe even deliberate errors to make Homo sapiens even crazier than they are. And there certainly is a bunch of things that do that, including parasites in your brain that tell you to kill yourself and all the other things, all these viruses and everything. All these things do not just hurt the physical body. Remember, if you're physically sick, you're mentally sick as well. You're not thinking at the proper level. So everybody's sick mentally and physically. So the whole idea is that mentally, people are giving way too much credit. So we went from the Darwin thing into the mind does everything, positive thinking, subconscious mind, all this stuff, and I believe that came from Freud, was the fact is this is how really, and we've embraced this wholeheartedly. And people think that the mind can do anything. Well, the mind can't do anything. Matter of fact, the mind does nothing. You are nothing more than a channel for information. And of course, you have to set up that channel, and that channel is set up through your inner magical being, your higher self. You channel in that information. That's how it works. Now, we need to understand that this works on subtle energy physics, which I've been talking about, and which is the IGOS way of working. And of course, all our products are based on connecting you to streams of energy that you draw into you to empower yourself because it isn't there. Now, some people are able to connect to these streams themselves, and that's why they are successful in certain areas because they just have this naturally happening. But it is not that it's in them. It's just that they naturally connect to these streams. And then these streams, of course, open up stronger because the stronger you get connected to them. That's how life works. So the whole idea is that all matter comes from informational energetic fields. It comes from occultons, it comes from psions, and the information is exchanged through tachyon fields faster than the speed of light. And this all happens pretty much instantaneously, and you start building a universe that way. Part of that universe is every little speck in it, and that is you yourself. So, you are not in any way anything more than a channel of information. Your mind can do what? Well, what does the mind do? The mind remembers all sorts of trash and toxins to actually work against you. So if you're traumatized in life, and this seems to even affect animal species, when something bad happens to you, you never forget it. Now that's part of the survival program, but it's also very counterproductive. So when you were traumatized at the age of 6, you're now 60, you still have that traumatized in you. That really has no value in your life. And I'm not sure it helped you from initially. There may have been a certain survival aspect. Let's say you were hit by a car, almost hit by a car when you were 6. Well, you're going to have that feeling every time you see a street. What's going to happen is your mind's going to come in there and say, be careful, you get hit by a car. And this is going to override you. And that may go into your dreams, into your thoughts. When you daydream, you may see highways and cars coming. This is how toxic and overdone the mind is, because the mind isn't trained, and the mind is allowed just to run wild. It should be put on a leash and closely kept by your side. Nobody does this. The mind then takes over all of your processes and infects the channels, the streams of information coming to you. And this is where you then have to fight against it. Because you're telling yourself, I'm scared, I'm weak, I'm poor, whatever. This starts to be, and this works into your physical reality because you're now thinking all of these toxic elements which produce failure. So, this is what the mind does. It's worthless. What is the mind good for? Cooking, cleaning, going to work, driving your car. That's what it was meant to do. It wasn't meant to think past that. It was meant to do basic jobs. So, consciousness, this word that means everything and nothing, which scientists love to throw around because it just confuses people, and then they sound like they know something by regurgitating what is really just the garbagest, lowest level thinking possible, which is speculative nonsense. Not even on something physical, but speculative on something that people don't even understand or give any credit to. So they think it's just the mind. The brain creates everything. Well, the mind and brain creates nothing. They are channels which are supposed to grab the information that is brought to you from your higher self. Now, if your higher self is not doing its job, you're going to be fed by guess what? The mind. And the mind's going to tell you crap. And the mind's going to go into all the things it likes to do. Eat, sex. This is what happens all the time because that's what the mind does. And there's nothing wrong with that on a base level. But what happens is that base level is what's running your entire life. So all you do is live in this greed, ego, sexual fulfillment, That's all that happens all the time. And that's what's happened to the world. I mean, it's not complicated if you do it right. That's what the consciousness from the brain and the mind produces. That's not conscious in the higher self. So the higher self, or technically your consciousness, your inner magical being, which is a better way, because what does consciousness mean? I mean, again, why even bother debating this? We are a live species. We feel pain. We are hungry. All the other things that come with it. Why debate what that is? It's stupid. It's a waste of time. Doesn't matter whether we're a speck on somebody's shoe in another multi-universe or not. None of that really matters. I mean, talk about something worthless, but let's face it. These people that are talking about this are worthless schmucks. They're science people who are paid very large salaries to sit around and contemplate unprovable, worthless information of what consciousness is, theoretical physics, theoretical whatever. Theoretical? Well, that means the fact of ifs, ands, and buts. And of course, they don't want to be proven that their theoretical thoughts are wrong, so they make sure that they produce just garbage. So it's one of the worst possible things we can get into. There shouldn't be theoretical anything. This should be that, look, we know this and we want to try this to see if this works. These people are theoretical. They're thinking of how to think. And this is how fraudulent society is and what a mind-created reality gives you. So I think we should give them theoretical paychecks. So the whole idea is that when we look at the mind, people have this thing that we went from this Darwinism in the past, which is what your parents' generation is. Oh, we're going to evolve into better species. Never happened, and it takes millions of years. Just a bogus understanding, and Darwinism in itself has so many holes in it, it isn't even funny. So it's not really a very proven theory, and there's been archaeological finds, bones and stuff, that have proven Darwinism to be wrong, including the fact that humans go back probably 10 million years. There's probably a species, the Homo sapiens, who have been on this planet since all the other animals have. But we don't want to get too distracted in that. But from there, we came into the fact that from pretty much the 70s, the late 70s, I should say, it's all mind. Everything's in the mind. The mind can do everything. The brain has the power to move mountains. Nonsense. The brain and mind can do nothing. It's a toxic sewer. I've said this so many times. And all it does is regurgitate a lot of negativity into your life and control you to fail. So your mind is past doing its other jobs is all it's meant to be. So you've got to constantly spend your time blocking the mind. And that's what all the techniques really are. When you talk about visualizations, all these other things you do, mind building, well, what you're doing is controlling a very weak, fat, sloppy, junk food eating consciousness or mind who doesn't produce much of anything. And it constantly has to be kept in shape and guided by the consciousness, your inner magical being, your higher self, to do anything of value. So that's the constant fight that goes on. Now, where do you get better information from? Well, there's your eternal self, which is your soul, which you could call that, which is your consciousness that goes on forever. This, of course, gets information to function in wherever and whatever you're at from a higher source of information. You could say it comes from the cosmos to a degree, but that's kind of an empty nothingness. But, this is a giant place of empowerment. And what is your mind? Well, your mind is nothing more than a channel. You have to bring all this stuff in. It's brought in by your higher self, your consciousness, your inner magical being. So people should understand that. Of course, that's what all the technology we have is based on. We connect you to streams of empowerment. This is what consciousness is. So you need health, you need money, you need relationships. Well, these are lacking. And your mind doesn't create anything. It has to go out and get the information. Now, where does the information come from? Well, it comes from your consciousness. Now, if you let the mind do that, it's going to screw up everything. because while it has a particular primitive goal, it doesn't know really how to go about that, and there's too much garbage in the mind brain that it cannot really manifest. The brain does nothing. The brain has no super abilities. If you have super abilities or certain qualities where you can telepath, can use telepathy, whether you can heal someone, whether you're good at something in general, this comes from an outside source. And this is what you channel into you. So everything's a channel that you need to go up to. There's nothing powerful about the brain or mind. And we can certainly prove that because basically nothing of great achievement has ever gotten to the public, regardless of the corruption factors, which are always critical. But the fact that somebody knows a lot about it, he's a skilled medical person. He is? Why, are there any disease cured? Why, they can do some operations and most of them are successful or help? Well, I don't know about any of that either. But yeah, wait a minute, he's good at whatever. Well, what does that mean? Well, he didn't. This is something that has been learned through a capacity of bringing that into you, and you've been able to bring that into. So, if you're a great car mechanic, you've been able to channel in that information because you are able to understand that better. If you're a great mathematician, well, that's because you've been able to. That was in your channel, and you got it. So. This doesn't come from the fact that the mind is doing. The mind does nothing, has no power, has nothing. So the point is, you channel that information in. You connect to what is called in IGOS a stream of empowerment. You draw that to you. So, and then you become empowered with that because you're lacking that, need that at whatever level. But you got to remember you're an empty vessel. Now, the problem is people have this idea that the mind manifests something when it's really not true whatsoever. Now, there's a very interesting book that kind of goes into this, all of this in a little greater depth, which I recommend everybody read. It's an inexpensive Kindle book listed down below. So, this gives you kind of an idea, and it also talks about this entire field of manifesting sciences, the occult sciences, metaphysics, whatever you want to call it, of the fact that of how these things are explained in every single area, and how, of course, regular science is so off. So this is a great book to read to give you that foundation again. I think it's important for everybody to clarify their path so they don't feel that they're on some silly delusional path that these pseudo-intellectual, theoretical scientists want to tell you that they know. It's amazing how they are dealing with theoretical concepts and they put everybody else down, which is interesting because theoretical means, I don't know. So, but they have changed it into, this is a working hypothesis that has value. Well, all of this stuff is very, very nonsensical talk by these pseudo-intellectuals. So, as we move into these areas, we have to fully understand what is going on so that you have a foundation. So when someone comes up to you, you're not kicked out of your legs aren't kicked out under you because somebody tells you you're a fool, and you get, of course, the local idiot gangs, the morons that are associates around you, students, etc., buy into whatever these stupid teachers tell you. So it is important to know this as an intelligent occult scientist, a manifesting scientist, so that you can respond to these things if need be. But you should be clarified in your own reality, in your own mind, what all this is as well. So it shouldn't be just, I'm doing this and it has no basis or anything else. Well, that's just not true at all. Everything that IGOS does is based in sound, practical, proven technology. It works, and it works for everybody. Does it work to a super high level for you? Well, this is where you connecting to the channels are so important. So you bring this channeled information into you, and that's what the mind does. The mind channels information that you give it, which is directed by your inner magical being, which makes everything happen. So it's not there. The mind cannot do all these things. You are able to do what's considered high level manifesting, bending spoons, telekinesis, other things. Well, this isn't coming from something within your mind. It's coming from what you're bringing in. So the reason we make this mistake is that we are based in this physical against energetic reality. So you've got the Newtonian solid materialistic way, and you have the advanced subtle energy physics way of doing things, where everything it comes from this energetic informational field. So this is what you have going against each other. Now, you think your mind creates all this stuff because the physical mind is there, and you just don't even really think about it. You just think, oh, well, your mind does everything. It does. Well, it also gives you an awful lot of trouble. For something that can do everything, it certainly does very little and tends to go bad on you. Whether you can cure yourself of some horrible disease by thinking to do that, well, why doesn't your mind do that naturally then? Why do you have to sit there and meditate and direct energy? Well, that has nothing to do with the mind. That's the consciousness that is now directing your inner magical being. Hey, we need to make changes here. You're off again, mind. You're in the toxic sewer land, and we have to now put you. And you got to do it all the time, because who's coming in there and messing you up? Oh, the mind is manifesting. Yeah, it's manifesting all the terrible garbage in your life. All the trash and toxic energies are coming from your mind. Now, we get this thing because we think something is coming from it. Well, this is like saying, and let's use, and everybody I think has a TV, and they understand the fact that the TV is there. And you could say, well, is the TV making the actual, and I don't think people think like that. Did the TV make the shows you're seeing? Whether it's a newscast or a movie or a TV series or whatever it is, did they make the TV itself, the hardware, make that television show? Well, I don't think anybody's really thought about that. Well, of course it doesn't. What is a TV? Well, TV is a receiver. It's a channel. So it's picking up the information that you tune into it. And there's different tunings, different frequencies that you're picking up right out of the air and then able to see that. Well, this is exactly how your mind works. So you need to understand that concept instead of thinking, well, it's manifested from the brain. That's like saying you turn on your TV and it makes the TV shows. No, it's a receiver, like a radio. What is a radio? Does a radio make what's in the radio? Does it make music? Well, of course not. It's a receiver. Those are signals that are put out there. And it's the same thing with the way manifesting works. So you have to tune that in. And like so many things, and of course you don't see that much anymore because of digital and satellites. But in the olden days, you had antennas on your TVs and even your radios. And a lot of times, you never got a really clear picture because you couldn't tune in that particular station because of the signal it was putting out, or you were too far from it. So you would move the antennas around to try and pick up that signal a little better and get the picture clearer. Sometimes you got it very clear. Other times you had to watch a bad TV, and maybe even the sound wasn't too good. Well, this happens with portable radios now. Now, if you have a portable radio with an antenna on it, which probably most people don't use anymore, but it is a good illustration of how things work. Well, you walk around and you move your radio in different directions to try and get a clear signal. Well, all of this getting clear signals on a TV and other things, now, of course, with cable and everything else, but when you have a good picture, or we could say in more modern terms, you get a connection. So if your cable or the wire going into your monitor or your TV is loose, not completely, well, your picture starts to act up. So it's not as clear. The sound isn't as good. So you have to then push it in better, make sure it's attached properly. Oh, this means you have to fine-tune what's going into that. That's the channel you're connecting to, and now you're fine-tuning it. So I hope people understand those examples. I think most people understand based on that older technology, but it's like a signal for your telephone as well. Some places you can't get a cell phone tower connection. Well, that's because the channel of that information is bad. That's what's really going on. So all this is very important to understand. So what you're trying to do is get that signal clear into you. So you're attaching to that stream of information to bring it into your mind, your consciousness, and so that your consciousness can act upon it and tell the mind what to do. Now, very critical. I hope everybody's gotten that. So you got to understand that your mind is nothing more than a receiver. It doesn't produce anything, particularly higher abilities. Now, oh, that's shocking. People don't think about these things. Of course, that's why you've got me, and that's why you're listening to this particular organization and hopefully following our teachings, etc. And this will all be coming out in my advanced lessons, which will come out in the new year, along with so many other technologies, which are really the cutting edge in this entire field. There's nothing like it out there because people don't get it. They're not thinking in this particular fashion, but that's what subtle energy physics are all about. So, here's the other very interesting information which I just ran into recently. Of course, you got to remember, I'm reading all the time. I've got like 400 books just sitting here in my office that I need to read. Good luck. But other things that I'm constantly taking information in. People talk to me all the time, and it's all about spurring or igniting a informational field within you. Well, this person said that. Well, what does that mean? Well, I don't buy what they tell me, but it's a great thinking tool to use, which is how the process of manifestation works as well. You take in information as a channel. You then come to a higher synergistic conclusion, meaning all the pieces put together make something kick ass. So what's very interesting is what we think that everything is about, well, you're working at a high brain level, meaning that your mind is working super fast like a computer, which is not how the mind works. Your mind is not a computer. It's very more sophisticated than a box of junk. I don't care how fast it works. And of course they are great tools, but that's what they're meant to be. It's tools. They're in a toolbox. It's the person who puts his hand in the toolbox gets the tool that decides how well it works. This is something we continue to be told by the evil, satanic, Illuminati negative people in life that, oh, you're an idiot. Get a machine to do it for you. And I'll sell it to you and I'll control it. So the point is, I don't care how good a technology is. It's not as good as your brain. We're still trying to, well, computers are almost as fast as the human mind. Well, look what we're judging it on, the human mind. So it seems to me I would like to use the original, the best, the real Coke instead of the fake. So the bottom line is that you have to understand that, and that's only the primitive Newtonian understanding of how the brain-mind functions as a physical entity, because they have no idea about the real basis of it, how it works. So they're not dealing anything with the subtle energy physics of it all, the energy informational fields. But here's the shocking information. Well, they found people who were having great spiritual epiphanies. Particularly people who are taking hallucinogens, ayahuasca, psilocybin, what is it? I can't think of the word right now, but all of these things, the mushrooms, all of these things that are mentally active and creating all sorts of mental releases, connections to spirits. We don't know really what's going on. It's a fascinating process. I don't like the uncontrollableness of it, but that's another thing. But people really enjoy it and use it, and it creates a lot of epiphanies in people's lives. Well, was that from taking a whole, it made your brain go crazy and it looks like a giant thunderstorm? No. The opposite happens. Now, isn't this fascinating? Note this, everybody. What happens is your mind slows down. And we're not talking about, well, you're kind of goofy and drunk and you're not functioning well. No. Well, your regular mind tends to do that to a degree in terms of what your mind picks up. But what's really happening is your consciousness is taking over and producing all these amazing revelations, manifestations, all these things that you see in these psychedelic experiences The brain is being used in an energetic fashion. It's not being used in a crude fashion, meaning you have all these more energies there. You want to get more activity, so you do things faster. No, it's the complete opposite. Just like if you want to give Einstein, which I do think was a great man, misled and goofy, but they found out that his brain was smaller, and he had less of these electro firings in his brain, whatever you want to call these neurons or whatever they are. He had less than the average person. He had a whole bunch more of what was considered excess brain tissue, and I forget the terminology of it now. But he had that kind of what was thought to be just there, just excess, maybe just even storage. He had triple the excess storage, the worthless part of the brain, the fat tissue, you could say, of the belly fat tissue of the brain. He had 3 times as much as the average person. Well, isn't that interesting? So it wasn't all these extra neurons and a big giant brain cranking more energy out, which is how we look at everything. More is better, higher energy is better, of these types of energies. No, not informational energetic fields, which you want to have, which is not necessarily it's not crude energy. It is informational energetic field. Yes, there's energy there, and they manifest, but it's not like it's a giant generator. It's an energetic field. There's no other way to describe it, because you have to say energetic, because you have to say it does something, or it's just there. And it has to be informational, because the information has to do something. If something just sits there, which is what quantum physicists state, that, it just sits there. Simple as that. There's no exchange of information. Well, that's nonsense. What kind of stupidity is that? But, it's very much of your theoretical way of thinking. So, because they can't think past what is just common 500 years ago from Newton. So the whole idea is that these kind of understandings are extremely critical. So when people are going into all these different states, just as magical, or I should higher state manifesting is, you don't concentrate on it. And this is one of the hardest things to get over as a person, because it's all about, we're going to meditate. Even with the yogic stuff, we're going to force ourselves by funny body positions, and we're going to make ourselves meditate to higher states. Well, it isn't any of that. So, and that's a misinterpretation of these systems anyway, because you're supposed to be going into this altered state of nothingness to a large degree. So, but a lot of these teachings don't tell you that. But the point is, when you manifest, or when you're even able to bend metal, which happens all the time, I've read this hundreds of times. People concentrate on make it bend, and they even have these bending parties, and they scream, bend, bend, bend. And people do this with manifesting in general. Well, guess what? It's the opposite. Well, how can you make anything happen, Thor, if you're not stating what you want to have happen and putting energy into it? Well, you're putting mind energy into it. You're not using subtle energy physics. You're not using informational energetic fields if you're trying to energize them using your little battery power in your brain. So you channel in these higher energetic informational fields that do the work. There's nothing. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to bend the size of this building here. So this steel pole, this lamp, street light. I'm going to bend this street light with my mind. So, and of course, they thought about this. And of course, you would think, that who else would think like this but the military? So can we use psychic power to bend tank barrels? Well, theoretically, if you're a theoretical physicist and understood it, you could say, well, that could be a level we get to, but that's an awful lot of mass moving. But as a theoretical physicist, I know what everything else does, so we can do that. So technically, you could. So, too bad I don't have somebody signing a big check for me for my great theoretical statement there. So the whole idea is that but it's not done on a make it happen way with you concentrating on it, because what you do is you switch off the channel, you close it down, And now you're using the pathetic, worthless brain energy, your mind, who's telling you that somebody slapped me at 3 years old and I still can't get over it. Oh, I've been hurt. I don't like this. This is what your mind's doing. Your mind's not filling you with good stuff. So that's what's going to give you empowerment? Well, of course not. No, you have to turn that off, allow in the subtle energy physics of it all to make it happen. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. Of course it is, or we'd all be gods. And you wouldn't be listening to me right now. I wouldn't even be existing here. But the point is that that's how it works. So, but what they're finding is that all these non-force concentration energies created, even within the brain, these extra tissues there, these cells, whatever they are not neurons, which are moving electronic information. They are moving subtle energy physics field, informational energetic field receptors and energizers is what these people that have high intelligence or people who can do stuff have. Now, if we looked at everybody's brain who are healers and mystics, you wouldn't find big, giant heads. As I said, Einstein had a smaller brain than the average person. Not a lot, but it certainly was smaller. So that is not what, again, you're looking at quantity instead of quality and things that actually work. So more of this, the more reality. Well, you don't need a lot. A good cook uses a tiny bit of spice. If you use too much spice, you're a really bad cook because that's all you taste. So, keeping that into consideration is very, very important. So, you are a channel. So what do? What happens when people take mushrooms, ayahuasca, and other things to create these high states of alternative thinking? What happens there? Your brain is just shooting off all these extra. No, it's the opposite. It goes way down, but it's not. You think, oh, it goes down, you just shut off, you fall asleep. No, it's the opposite. What's happening with these drugs is they're stimulating. They're bringing in and opening up the subtle energy physics field. They're connecting you to that stream, which is a very potent stream. Of these types of things that are going into the actual energetic fields of your mind, which are channeled directly through your entire physical and spiritual body. So what happens here is you're not doing it. It's not a speed up process. It's not an adding process of what are called the common energies. It's the opposite, and it opens you up. So if you want to bend a spoon, well, what happens, and I've said this several times, is that people can't bend when they do that. They have problems because they're using, pushing it. Nothing to do with pushing. Then they turn to the guy next to them and say, gee, I can't get this thing to bend. And it bends at that time. Why? Because they went from the concentration energy, the primitive Newtonian materialistic energy field, into the subtle energy field, the subtle energy physics of it all, the informational energetic field that makes things happen. And that is not forced, it just happens. And this is how everything does. You know, if you're doing any kind of things from dialing in radionic machines to so many other things, it's not about concentrating on the result. You do have to say, well, I want this at a quick, and that's why we do things so quickly now. Just get the intention out there. The rest of it is empowered by your inner magical being, which is kind of, it's so weird, it's just, it has to be done on this unaware level. Doesn't make any sense. But of course, that's the way it is because you're trying to move something that is, quote, non-physical using a physical tool, meaning you're using a shovel to try and move consciousness energies. So you're getting a shovel that you move dirt with, and then you're trying to say, well, I'm going to use this shovel to move consciousness energies. Now, this has been done in a lot of magical things. You'll see even in the particularly Chinese and so forth. They use a lot of swords and stuff to go after demons and so forth. But these are representations. You're using a physical sword, which you're turning into a subtle energy information field to strike at those kind of energies. So there's a way of using it backwards like that, but that's the intention of it. In the West, you're trying to actually physically move like thoughts with a shovel. So, yeah, I'm going to catch your thoughts in my shovel. I'm going to move them over here. That doesn't work. So, using a primitive physical tool that's not designed for that. So it's very important to understand. So all your brain is a tuning. It's a TV. You tune it into what you want. It's an open channel. And what you do with all the practices and so forth is using amulets, other things, is you're tuning that station to bring in that energy. Now, what is the problem there? The problem is that you are fighting against it. Your mind is stopping this energy from manifesting in your life. So what's happening is your inner magical being, your higher self, your consciousness is fighting the kind of low-level idiot that your mind is, which you've given total, complete control to. So when people aren't spiritual, they don't think in spiritual ways, that means that their mind is always in control because it has to do the normal things. And of course, the mind is always in control to a degree. There's the brain that keeps your heart beating and your lungs breathing, etc. These are all the things that are a necessity. But when it goes past that and you give it so many jobs to do and don't give it anything else to do because you're not practicing something spiritual, it takes over and it feeds you garbage. So this is what happens. So we have to be very, very careful with all of that. So I hope that makes it clear. Your mind does nothing. It has no empowerment. As a matter of fact, the kind of things that people are trying to do on the levels of manifestation, on the levels of influencing, on the levels of healing, have absolutely nothing to do with concentrating on it. And again, this has been proven, and I highly recommend everybody read William Bengston's book, The Energy Cure, and how the lack of connection with, the lack of thinking about things so much makes it happen because you're triggering in all those very powerful energies. So it's the lack of common energetic fields, electric, Hertzian fields that your mind puts out. Now, this is part of the components of doing things because they're there and you might as well use them. But the whole idea is you're trying to capture these subtle energy fields, these informational energetic fields, which are run by the exchange of information through tachyons, that create everything. Now, the point is that it's difficult to use that, and rightfully so, because if you reach the master level of that, I'm under the opinion that if you become so powerful on this plane that you just automatically ascend out of it, what's the point? You've won the game. You want to play the game again? Well, you've won already. It's like playing Monopoly. You got all the money. Well, there's no more money to get. Why do you want to keep playing the game? Well, it's fun. I'm winning. Well, it doesn't matter. You've already won. There's no use playing the game. It's done. It's over. You beat it. You've won. Boom. You've ascended out of here. So, and this is how most people ascend in this day and age. It isn't that consciousness thing, creating your rainbow body and all this kind of stuff. These are things that are done by basically people who haven't really won the game. They've spent too much time meditating. So that's how it works. So, and if you reach that level and you are able to manifest anything you want, and basically based in the understanding of subtle energy physics and the use of informational energetic fields, you can change the field of anything into whatever you want it to be. And that could be for influence, that could be physically change lead into gold. Well, why not? Isn't gold just another makeup of a particular vibrational energy? And all you have to do is change the energy of one thing that is kind of similar into the energy of another. So, of course, that's what alchemy was all about. And some people have figured out how to do this to some degree in kind of difficult ways. And, of course, with the primitive technology of ancient times. And it was using all these subtle energies. They were channeling in energies to have this effect. Now, whether it was channeling in astrological energies, planetary energies, no, they did all this stuff to have it. And these are very, quote, subtle energy fields, but very profoundly strong if done correctly. Now, you're getting all these influences that are changing all the time. And this, of course, is where you make these huge changes. So it's very important to understand that. That is, your brain is not making anything. Your brain's a radio. It's a TV. And you're just dialing the knobs or pressing the control button, which changes a frequency. Nobody has knobs anymore. But the point is you have your control. And I want to go to channel 6. Channel 6 is frequency 1400. Well, what's on channel 8? Well, that's 1500 or 15.5 or whatever it is. The point is that's what you're doing, and of course that's what. So 15.5 could be that energy you want to heal yourself. So you're punching that in, comes into your TV, and now you have to use it, and this is where the real problem comes in. How, to what extent, and can you use that energy? And this is where it takes a whole changing of your reality. Now, your consciousness comes in, your inner magical being comes in and starts to assist using this. But what happens is the minute it comes into there, your mind starts swinging at it with a bat. Get out of here. I don't want you in here. I'll figure this out myself. Well, you don't know how to do this. I don't care. So this is the fight that goes on. So those who are able to encompass it are able to combine the toxic, fighting, primitive, screwing, eating, egotistical, violent human into this higher level consciousness, which makes everything work. But your brain does nothing. Get this clearly into you. This is the fallacy produced by Newtonian understandings that the physical creates consciousness. No, consciousness comes to you. Consciousness was created first. That then creates the physical, just as subtle energy physics states to begin with. It's the informational, energetic fields that combine together that form physical matter that's appropriate for what that is. And physical matter is a thought, it's love, it's hate. That's all physical as well. So it's not like these are not physical. The fact that Sean Carroll and his goofball hoodlums freaks cannot figure out what is non-physical in terms of slapping you in the face is their problem. It doesn't make it wrong. What makes it wrong is signing a check for a philosophical physicist. So, a theoretical physicist, I should say. As I said, they should get theoretical money. So the whole idea is that all of this is how things work. Now, if you base that in the understanding of subtle inner physics of this important information I've just given you, this is the key to everything. Now, and there's no use contemplating stupidity of what consciousness is. No, I've laid everything out. Learn how to use this information, these energetic fields, to make things happen in your life, because that's what it's all about. We are all physical entities to one extent or another, whether we like it or not. We're in a horrible, dangerous, threatening game, and our goal is to win. And when you win and you understand this, and the process of winning this game is coming to high states of understanding, you then ascend out of here, and then you beat the reincarnation, because there's a reincarnation cycle that is hooked up to this reality, and it sucks. Who wants to come back here? I don't care who you are. Do you really want to be rich and famous? Does that really mean anything? Well, it really doesn't. I mean, there's certain comforts to this. You think it's a great lifestyle, but I think it's very unfulfilling when you really get to it. You have all this success and money, and what do you have? Well, I think most of these people tend to be very unhappy, ultimately. And if they are happy, they're kind of happy sitting in a pile of poo. And they don't even know that they're surrounded by mass amounts of flies. So they just don't get it. So that's a delusional state unto itself. But this is the key to everything. So you have to learn how to integrate. You have to connect to this using different tools, machines, and everything. And we are based in this kind of reality. We are not internal beings. Now, when you keep giving energy over to the mind by doing, quote, spiritual activities that are not based on drawing higher energies to you, you are wasting you're going deeper down the hole of disgusting putrefaction and into failure. You will reincarnate endlessly when you think you're going to do this through what's called the spiritual path that we have now. And that's the reason why nothing ever changes. See, the spiritual path that we have now was made by the same people that are making the negative path. It's a trick like they do in the media today. All those people who think are on the other side, you really think they're on the other side? No. They're being paid by the same people, and there is always the loyal opposition. And the loyal opposition is paid and bought, and it's all part of the game. Now, if you understand what I've just told you and start working on transferring these energies, being that channel for what you want, instead of thinking, well, I'm going to create it, and then you think you're going to spiritually make something happen by concentrating on it. And meditation is concentration. You have to get past the concentration level until you get into the zone of nothing. When you're in the zone of nothing, things pop into your head. Things just happen, as I said. So this is the difficult thing to understand, because you're living in the world of making it happen. Well, that's not how it works. It happens because you're using these informational energetic fields, which are transferring information with tachyons faster than the speed of light. That create everything. And it's not this kind of pushing physical process. And we always think of that, the Big Bang. Something exploded and particles are being pushed out. This is not how manifestation works. And I don't believe that theory either. The whole idea is wherever informational energetic fields come from, which tend to just manifest by themselves, and they are intelligent in nature, just like the most intelligent things on this planet are things like viruses, bacteria, parasites. Oh, they don't have spines, dude. They're not smart. Yeah, they're pure consciousness, baby. And try and beat them, because we have not been able to beat anything that's pure consciousness. And we never will if we keep thinking in the way we do. So, hope that's clear. Until next time.